There was no going back now. He'd be on his own from this point on, he knew, and he deserved to be so. Too coward to tell her what he'd done, that he'd betrayed her trust in him. Again. He couldn't bear it, couldn't deal with it. And after all the tears she'd shed, they'd both shed, promises that he'd try harder, get some help. Promises that she'd wait for him, but not for an eternity, she'd made that part clear. He'd eventually managed to abstain from the devil. But temptation had long, gnarly fingers that pulled at him like a fly dragged to a spider's web. And like a fly, he'd fought hard to set himself free. Not hard enough. He was weak, he knew that, and he despised himself for being so, for what he'd done, and for the upset to come. For her. The pity he'd see reflecting back at him from her eyes. Or would it be hatred now, this final time? Maybe that would be easier to deal with. The thought sparked resignation, and he lifted his chin slightly as a tear rolled over his 3-day-old stubble. He watched it land on his thigh, a tiny wet stain spreading as another fell and added to it, widening the dampness on the trousers of his uniform. There'd been so many tears from them both. There could be no more. The idea was born. It would dissolve the anguish in each of them, set them free. Wiping his face with the flat palm of his hand, the driver sniffed loudly to clear his sinuses and force an energy into his lungs. The idea had caught him by surprise, but he was instantly comfortable with it all the same. There was no other choice. He sniffed again, loudly, his nose flaring like a racehorse's, then wrinkling in determination. He lifted his eyes and dragged them into focus, shaking his head slightly in an attempt to clear them. A shot of determination coursed through every muscle, every sinew, every tendon. He sat up straighter in his seat, feeling cocky almost, as he edged the accelerator on another 10. He heard the engine change slightly as it processed the request for further power, and he listened to the increase in tempo, like he might an orchestra. Another 10, and another subtle change in sound. It was likely not audible to anyone sat in the carriages further back, but he was tuned in. He knew what to listen for. He was the conductor, though, of a rather different kind of orchestra. There were no music instruments on his dashboard, no triangle to chime when the time came, no drum to beat, no bugle to blow. It wouldn't be hard to hear the next acceleration, and his passengers would certainly feel it. The driver knew the tracks well, knew every signal, every bend, every station platform. Even faces, though not their names. The train hurtled through the Kent countryside, the vivid yellow of rapeseed topping fields on both sides of the tracks like runny egg yolk resting on soldiers of toast. As the long string of carriages headed south, then on to France. They wouldn't be getting that far. Not today. He was sorry, though he couldn't tell them all, or explain why. And still the orchestra played on in his head, cymbals crashing, double bass bellowing. His timing, once his decision had been made, was crucial. He was in control, his actions clear in his mind. The bend he needed was rapidly looming in the distance, and he forced another shot of determination into his veins, wrinkling and flaring his nose once more as he added the final installment of electric power to the engine. The train could go no faster. Idly, he wondered if anyone further back had noticed the shift in acceleration. Were they concerned at all? Frightened, possibly. It was too late to think of them now. He knew his plan would work. The corner would make sure of that. Then the steel arc was upon them, and he sounded his horn, though not in warning. There was no point in that. The scream that descended was his own anguished cry of pain, the engine vocalizing for him what he felt in his core so deep down inside. He'd done it. Peace at last. The torment deserted him, the betrayal extinguished, the noose around his neck slackened. The darkness was a blessing. His own orchestra, quiet.